start with a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Winchester.
Here.
Ryan.
Here.
Burton. Ruth.
Here.
Hollis.
Here. All right. Agenda approval. Chair would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the agenda.
Support.
Jen Ryan, support by Clerk Winchester. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial. They do not require discussion by the Township Board, and they will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion. If discussion is desired on an item, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will automatically be moved to the last item under new business.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Jen Ryan to approve. Support. Support by Steve Ruth. Roll call, please.
Winchester.
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
Ruth.
Yes.
Hollis.
Yes. Motion carries 4-0. We have no public hearings. We have a presentation on the master plan by John Jackson, but he is caught up in traffic. So we're going to move on. We will pick him back up when we get to approval of the master plan, and he can do his presentation at that time. That will take us to reports from the trustees. Mr. Ruth?
Nothing for me.
And Clerk Winchester?
No report.
Treasurer Ryan?
Just note that we got a call, it was in the paper too, the state bank is merging with Choice One Bank. They have said when they called that there will be no changes, just a change in the name of the bank. So we shall see going forward, but that's where it's at right now.
Okay. We have work on the farmstead progressing. Dean has been out there. I see the concrete for the foundation was poured this week, and he's got more of the beams laying out in the lawn. It looks like a giant erector set, if you will. I know erector sets were metal, but it's still all kind of laid out there, getting ready to go. So the road is serving its purpose. The road hasn't been completed from the entrance side because we're still waiting on the permit from the county. So we can't do anything until that's issued, but once you get in the property and go to the left, the road is there. So we're waiting on that. We will enter into old business. The new Township Hall property.
Public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry, public comment. Jumped right over it. Public comment on agenda items only. Members of the public can address the board on agenda items only, once recognized by the supervisor. Comments are limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. The board may extend this time by a majority vote. Prior to addressing the board, members of the public shall state their name and address for the record. A second public comment is available after new business for all other comments. Thank you for your cooperation. Do we have anybody for public comment? Mary?
I guess I just have more of a question as far as the presentation regarding the Township Hall. I understood last month that you were going to have a presentation this month.
He's here tonight. We're just not doing separate presentation because if we get into Q&A, somebody's going to want to make a motion. We're going to put it all together.
Okay.
He's going to start with that, and then we'll go there. Okay. With two presentations, my concern was we'd get them separated, then go down here and start it all over. Okay. So with the old business, new Township Hall property HRC proposal, John Ballin.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor, Madam Clerk, Madam Treasurer, and Township Board. My name is John Ballin. I'm a fellow off the park. broke it down into 4 tasks. The goal of this project is to develop the property as quickly and efficiently as possible, while taking the adequate time to plan and engage citizens of the township to get their input on the overall plan. Obviously, the end result is going to be like a township campus with the necessary services that the township needs and amenities for the community. Now, part of this is the township wants to move the township hall, move to this new building and begin operations. But there's, even for that part, there's some planning and some construction that needs to take place to make the building useful and work correctly for a township hall, because that's not what it was designed for. So our proposal is split into 4 tasks. Task 1 is we call it project management and public engagement. So basically that's meetings with the township, that is scheduling public engagement, that's putting together options for considerations, and getting these meetings together to hear from the public and from the township on what is needed. And a lot of it is just interior to the township for the functions of the township hall building to make sure it's right. We need to take the time and effort to plan it correctly and have it laid out correctly so that it functions the right way. Task 2 is the site plan for the township hall property. This will be an overall plan for the property showing building, parking, setbacks, easements, all of those items that we need to know to develop the property correctly, because we can't, we need to find the easements to make sure that we're not trying to put a building on top of an easement, or we need to do some soil borings to make sure we can build a building in certain areas. So we need to do that due diligence. As part of this, we also need to apply for site plan approval to the village of Holly, because the building isn't within the village. As part of that, we'll do a wetland and floodplain review. We'll determine if any eagle permitting is required, confirm storm sewer and detention and utilities and all those things to make sure that the property works correctly for the overall build out. So that would get us site plan approval process with the city, with the village, and so that's kind of the end of that task. And these are somewhat consecutive as they go through. Task 3 is conceptual building design. So this is looking at the form and function of the existing building and taking into account the information that we gathered from some public engagement and from meetings with the township staff to build the building correctly, to make sure hallways and rooms and offices and conference rooms are where they need to be, so that the township can function very well. This would also be looking at architectural design here for the interior of the building and potentially addition to the building for the uses that we need. Task 4 is where we get into construction documents for whatever design we come up with. This would be additional parking, this would be the changes for the interior of the building, any facade changes, design for any building additions that need to be done. And also with this side, we did realize, we heard today that there's actually a grant from Oakland County Planning that can assist with facade design. So that can lower some of these costs a little bit as we get into some facade, because this is in the DDA district of the village. So that can be, we can apply for that through Oakland County Planning, and I believe that's a free service that they can provide. So that will help. So as part of this, again, interior design, there'd be some meetings. The end deliverable of this stage would be full construction documents that the township can put out to bid. This would include, so obviously the bidding and permitting documents, final cost estimates. This would include any civil, electrical, mechanical, plumbing design for any changes that go on the interior of the building. Also with this, we would be assisting with bidding, including pre-bidding meetings, responding to contractor clarification questions through the bid process, issuing any addendums that need to be handled, and then once bids are received, we would assist in evaluating bidder qualifications, creating bid tabulations from the bidders, kind of comparing and contrasting their pricing, and then verification of contractor references once that contractor is selected. So kind of it gets us to the stage of construction with all the required documents and everything like that. So, are there any questions? I know there was a lot.
I have a question.
Sure.
The number 3 has a $100, $20,000. None of the others have any additional monies. Is there a reason for that?
Number 3.
Is the only one that's not an even number.
Yeah, and that's just kind of the way we estimate. It's typically, we base it on, we look at employees that would be working on the project, and we kind of estimate hours, and that's just kind of how it worked out.
And these are not to exceed numbers.
These are not to exceed, and I do want to point that out. These are not to exceed, and what we do here is we put in, again, we don't know how detailed this project is going to get. We need to have multiple meetings and get into public engagement. So this could go from, 5 to 10. And so we put in enough money so that we could do the biggest project that the township needs because as you get into it, things may change, depending on meetings and scope. We want to make sure we had enough money so that when it's time to get into like construction documents, we're not running out of money and then all of a sudden we have to call a special meeting of the board to keep moving. These are not to exceed numbers, and typically, so we don't bill to any of these numbers. We bill on an hourly basis, so we just bill for the work we do.
And typically, they come in significantly lower
Okay.
in our experience in all of our projects.
My question was just on like the timing, because it mentioned site plans for the public engagement, but I'm assuming the site plans are gonna take a while, and that was I was just wondering the timing
You
of
mentioned
that.
site plans for the public engagement. Those are more like just graphics, some
Okay.
pictures that people can look at to get a feel for what we're looking at. Then when I say site plan under, and I know it's kind of the same, but when I say site plan under like task 2, that's that's the site plan that's going to the village.
Right,
It's a
okay.
detailed civil and architectural site plan.
And there'll be more, like as we get the public input for the balance of the property. So maybe other buildings that we're going, if we can get grants like for, a community center, or, those kind of things.
Yep.
Did you
Yeah.
want dates?
Huh?
Did you want dates?
Oh, I wasn't, not necessarily, I was just wondering like order and timing.
Yeah, so
Dates.
I guess I can go into like overall time because we've discussed that a little bit. I know the initial goal was one of the initial goals was to try and move in January, like right after the holidays. With this and changes, we want to make sure that the building's ready to use and that we don't have to, you move to the building and all of a sudden you have to move all your stuff again because there's going to be construction in that area.
Right.
Interior construction. So the goal is to have everything ready, at least for the interior of the building and like some parking and those needed things, have as much as we can have done by spring of 2025, so that the township can move in and then not have to move again. So you guys are settled in the spots and not have to move anything. And then if some other stuff has to take place after that, it's in other areas. So township business can be handled and not disrupted.
Now, I did get some information late this afternoon. I've already talked to John on it, so he got a heads up. The Dawson Tire is within the it's within the DDA district.
DA district, yes.
And because it's in the DDA district, it makes us available to services from Oakland County Planning through the Main Street program. And those services are involved with conceptual drawings and design for the front of the building. I told John about it, so that'll help us save some money here, and they'll be able to work with them. And their time frame is, we'll have to get with Nick Klemp to get the application turned in, and once we've got that in, they can work with HRC, and they said they should be able to have that kind of stuff done by October, which fits within your scope. of the work too. So that'll be some additional help.
I was not expecting you to say such a quick date.
Yeah.
You
Well,
mean October 2024 even?
yeah, well, so
Not
I-
25?
I talked to them, and when I finally found out all the details, I went back to your office, and you had scooted home to get something to eat. So that's why you didn't know about it, but I had talked to John before he came over.
Any other
Great.
questions, concerns? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have the resolution,
Proposal.
or no, proposal, that's the resolution's the other thing, sorry.
I would move to approve the proposal from HRC dated July 31st, 2024.
Support?
Motion by Clerk Winchester, support by Treasurer Ryan. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ryan,
Yes.
Ruth,
Yes.
Winchester,
Yes.
Collis.
Yes. Motion carries 4-0. Try to keep my paper straight because we've got a lot tonight. Okay, next is the appointment of zoning board of appeals alternate member, term ending 12/31/24. I'd like to appoint Richard Kinnaman to that position. It's only through December of this year. He has accepted that, so that's the name I'm bringing forward.
I would move to appoint Richard Kimmen to the Zoning Board of Appeals alternate member, term ending 12/31/24.
Support?
Motion by Clerk Winchester, support by Treasurer Ryan, to fill the alternate member position for the Zoning Board of Appeals with Richard Kinnaman. Any further discussion? None appearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now we will go into new business. I see that John Jackson made it
Yep.
through all the traffic, and you found a place to park and with the car show?
Right out in front, it's, mine's that nice black Camaro out there.
Oh, then you're good. You drove the right
I
car.
thought it was a funny car.
Huh?
I feel like I'm filling out the dessert cart. 'Cause they went
He wants-
through the master plan process. So, first of all, congratulations, because I think the township's in a good position now in terms of having put in so much work and effort on developing a master plan. The planning commission members have been diligent about going over every single page, every single policy, every single map, everything to make sure that really truly represents the direction the township sees itself going in over the next few years. So, again, a lot of work and effort went into it, and it shows, I think, in the final product. But it's just sort of the first step in a series of other projects moving forward, including one we're gonna talk about, which is the zoning ordinance, which is something the township has wanted to take on for years now, as a tool to implement the master plan. That sounds good. Come on. There, oh, there.
There's hope.
Okay, there we go. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about.
Josh.
Yes.
Turn the lights off. I don't know if it'll make a difference, but
It is pretty Sunny.
Okay, so, first of all, I probably should introduce myself. John Jackson with McKenna, and I'm the president of McKenna, but I've been involved with Holly Township for probably over 10 years now, maybe even closer to 15 years, actually.
Yeah.
Working with the township on all kinds of fun and exciting projects. We worked on the master plan that was done back in 2012. We've had the opportunity to work with the public in a lot of public engagement activities over the years, including surveys and things like that. So we really, over that time, feel like we've become an extension of the township. We've heard the debates that go on. We've heard the struggles between, conserving and preserving the valuable natural assets here in the community, the open spaces in the community, with the pressure to allow some forms of appropriate development in the township to accommodate things like an aging population. Where are the empty nesters and the seniors going to live without having to leave the community? So we've seen these struggles, and we've worked with the planning commission, as I mentioned, to try to address these. The process, just so everyone's aware of, didn't happen overnight. The planning commission knows this painfully well, but it started back in December 2022 when we kicked it off, talked about where the township wants to go generally, said let's get into the new master plan. So in spring 2023, we launched the process, kicked it off, started identifying ways of reaching out to the public, including a survey that went out to everyone in the township. And then in the winter and spring of 2024, the planning commission really rolled up their sleeves and started, based on that public input, based on the demographic analysis that we did, based on the trends that we've seen in other communities around Michigan, the growth trends, the community development trends we've seen in the state of Michigan and in Oakland County, really rolled up their sleeves and said we want to make sure we have a plan that represents where we want to go in terms of our land use development policies. And so after they did that, after they took the first crack at it, they sent it up to the township board. So you guys have seen this before. They sent it to the township board with a recommendation that says, hey, this plan is in good shape. Let's send it around to the adjacent communities, see what they have to say. Let's send it to the county. Let's send it to the road commission in Oakland County. Let's send it around and see what those communities have to say as well, because we're part of a bigger region. So, and that's required by state. So the township board had a chance to look at it at that time, and that was back in March of 2024. The township board said, yep, we're more or less on board with this plan. Let's get some more input from adjacent communities and other agencies. So we did that. It came back, and the comments were minimal in terms of adjacent communities, what they thought about the plan, how they thought it affected them. Oakland County had some good things to say about some of the innovative initiatives that were in the plan, so we got some good feedback from Oakland County. And so there weren't a whole lot of changes to be made at that point, but again, the planning commission really wanted this to be their plan, be the township's plan. So again, they rolled up their sleeves, started to say, okay, let's fine tune this, let's make sure we get it right. And so a couple of the things that they did is, number one is they were not comfortable with some of the initial densities that we had in the neighborhood residential future land use categories. So they asked us, how can we pare that back a little bit and still achieve our objectives? So we did that, and there were several meetings back and forth, we did a housing study as part of this. So we looked at what the housing demands are, what kind of housing the community needed in order to be sustainable. And not open the floodgates to a whole bunch of new development that would show up the countryside, right? We didn't want that. So we looked at those options and came up with some revisions to the future land use plan. We looked at one of the assets of the community, which of course is the Great Lakes subdivision, which is very, very unique. And so we wanted to make sure that that was represented in the master plan as a unique area of the township where some of the other land use policies may not fit it perfectly. Some of the zoning moving forward may not, or in the past hasn't fit it perfectly. So how can we make sure we appropriately address that? And we've already made some advances in that area on the Great Lakes subdivision. And we added some clarifying notes on the natural resource inventory. There's some maps in there that talk about priority areas, and some of the comments we got, well, whose priorities are those? So we spelled out clearly that they're an inventory created by the state of Michigan, and that's how we analyze that from a water, natural resource perspective. And then, of course, we did the fly specking to make sure we got all the grammar things and done. And again, the planning commission really took the time to dive in here, went over it with fine tooth comb, magnifying glass, microscope. I don't know what other things I can say about how detailed they look at it, but I think this plan represents their hard work. I wanted to put this map up here because it sort of summarizes the overall direction that the master plan is taking. You can see sort of the light colored areas, the northwest quadrant of the township, sort of the north central portion of the township are all areas that have been identified as appropriate areas to emphasize preservation. Those are the areas that are currently not very developed, and we want to keep it that way. And so the other parts of the township that you can see in the northeast quadrant is an area where, along Dixie Highway, is an area where we've identified as appropriate for development for a number of reasons. It has access to the regional road network, highway network, so on and so forth. It's very likely to be able to be serviced by utilities, water, and sewer. And so that's an area where the planning commission and the public felt this is a good area to encourage development. The other area where it was determined to be appropriate for development was the area along Grange Hall Road near Fish Lake, where obviously there's already been some residential development in that area, in some commercial areas that have been established there and looking for maybe an infusion of energy in that area. So that's another area that we felt was appropriate for higher density development, and also another area likely to be able to be serviced by water and sewer. So we created these two areas to basically be the receiving areas for future development, to take the pressure off the vast majority of the rest of the township. It sort of shows it in perspective here. Those are very small areas relative to the overall size of the township, and so those are the areas where we anticipate seeing the development accommodated, and the rest of the areas remaining large lot, open space type development out there. Let's see, there is an area north of Holly Road. You can see there's that area that's sort of orange up at the top there. This is something that we developed in the 2012 master plan. Because of what was happening in Grand Blanc Township in terms of development up there, we thought it would be good to have an area in the township, in Holly Township, where we could possibly take some of that spin-off development, again, in a way that didn't necessarily start to encroach in the countryside areas of Holly Township. So focused tightly on North Holly Road, and so that area remains there as part of the township's opportunities for future development. I'm going to go to some quick images here, so bear with me. These are some of the highlights. Holly Township is projected to grow. It has grown. It's going to continue to grow according to people's crystal balls through 2020 through 2050. So we want to make sure that growth happens in a way that's consistent with the character of Holly Township. I mentioned there's an aging population, which means that without housing options, smaller houses, condos where you don't have to maintain the yard, it means that the seniors don't have choices, so they end up staying in their houses. And that means that there aren't housing options for young families trying to move into the community. So there's sort of a trickle-down effect. So we want to make sure that we take these demographic trends into consideration when we look at our housing policies. There's another thing we identified. This is not unique to Holly, but the portion of the population that is encumbered is increasing. about? What's the character we're talking about? So when we talk about coming up with design guidelines, we're gonna be talking about the zoning ordinance here in a second. And we wanna make sure that we put standards in place to make sure that the development that comes into Holly looks like it belongs here, looks like it's always been here, looks like it's an extension of the community, the character that everyone is very committed to preserving. So when we talk about single-family homes, this is the character that we're talking about. This is the kind of single-family home we're talking about. And the density on this is 4 dwelling units per acre. So when you start to hear densities, it's important to kind of see what the actual physical appearance is.
John,
Yeah.
before you leave that page, because of the brick on the wall, it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, what's the square footage?
1,930 square feet.
Okay, I couldn't read it because of where the brick line is.
Yeah. So we did this analysis again to show that smaller lots have value. This is right out of the village of Holly. So when we talk about higher density single family, we're not talking about Novi, we're not talking about Troy, we're not talking about Canton, we're talking about Holly, the village of Holly. And we're using that as inspiration to create these densities and these development standards. The township is not the village. We clearly understand the distinction, but the reason we wanted to look at that is because people are used to seeing the development in the village, and so if it comes out into the township, it'll feel like it belongs. And again, it has value, $314,000. That's pretty good real estate value for a single family home, 1,900 square feet. And again, the density here is 4 dwelling units per acre. This is 12 dwelling units per acre. It's been here for a while in the village. There's better examples out there of this density, but again, we wanted to look at something that existed in the community here, so you could get a feel for what it looks like. And again, in terms of the value, $1,100 a month. I mean, that's pretty reasonable record, but still, it has a lot of value. I threw this in here because we have an area in the master plan designated rural town center. And in that area, we talk about residential densities of up to 12 dwelling units per acre or more if it's a mixed-use development. So here's a building, it's right here in the village. There's 7 dwelling units in this building, and the actual density, if you spread it out over an acre, would be 94 dwelling units per acre. So when you hear us talking about densities of 12 units per acre, 14, 20 units per acre, it's not even approaching this kind of density. Scale is a huge part of that conversation too, and we took that into consideration when we developed these standards as well. And those are a lot of things that we discussed with the planning commission too, to make sure we calibrated this correctly. Okay, we could have this presentation last for 3 days here based on all the presentations we did with the planning commission, but I want to get to the sort of the nuts and bolts here. So, the biggest land use designation, the future land use plan is rural estate. That's the area up in the northwest part as well as the north central part. And so this is what we're talking about. It's going to be mostly open areas, very large lots. We do put in some provisions there for some other types of development approaches, which would be cluster development, which would mean that the houses were clustered closer together, but the vast majority of the site remains open. But we're still only talking about densities in that scenario of 5-acre lots. So even in that scenario, we're talking about big lots, okay? And then we have this other concept that we're talking about, which is transfer of development rights. And that's a concept where someone who owns the land in a rural estate district can preserve it permanently with minimal activity. They can continue to farm it. They could have maybe some agricultural tourism activities on them. Those kind of low impact activities. Maybe a very low number of units at much higher ratio than 1 per 40 acres. So there's minimal development on it. In exchange for selling their development rights to somebody in one of the areas where we're trying to attract development. Okay, so they can sell their development rights to someone in the Dixie Highway corridor at Fish Lake Grange Hall Road area, so that those people would get the bonus and these areas would remain relatively undeveloped, which is the goal of the township. Okay. Low density residential. You can see we're talking about 5-acre lots here, generally by right, 2.5-acre lots, if you do the cluster option, and 1-acre lots, which is a little confusing because they wouldn't actually do the development on this property. That's the value of the property that they could sell to someone on a different piece of property. So this, again, would remain open under that transfer option. Neighborhood residential, this is where we're starting to get into the higher densities of 1-acre lots, half-acre lots, and 3 units per acre. So you can see we're starting to get into higher densities, mostly single-family still, single-family detached in these areas. And then we get to the rural town center. And again, this is the areas that we designate, the areas where we designated this are Grange Hall, Fish Lake Road, as well as areas up on Dixie Highway. And the idea there is, again, if we're going to attract commercial development, we want to make sure that it's not gas stations, car washes, things that cater to people driving through the community. We want to create nodes of areas where people want to live. So you can see empty nesters and seniors looking for a place to live where they don't have to maintain the surrounding property. They could live here and have access to commercial activities, social activities, and maybe even some public community activities. So that's the concept when we talk about the rural town center. And again, the part of this is it's more than just the land use. We're talking about what character, what does it look like. So that's why we felt it was important to put these images in here to say that if development happens in here, it should really feel like Holly, like some of these images show. You have 2-story units, gable roofs, shed dormers, clapboard siding, you know, the things that are in the vernacular of Holly Township and the village of Holly. This is a great concept. It's called an agrihood. And again, some of the seniors that have lived here all their lives are used to it being like this with farm fields and open spaces. So what happens if you take those large open spaces and integrate some innovative housing types, like some of these cottage type housing right there on a large rural farmstead or something like that, accompanied with some kind of agritourism type of activity as well. So this is the character we're trying to promote in the master plan that will translate into the zoning ordinance so that you guys can get the kind of development that you want to see here in Holly Township. Some more images. So that's basically an overview of the master plan. It's before you now. The Planning Commission has recommended approval of it. We've gone through all the statutory requirements. We've had the public hearing. So we've checked all the boxes. And now we're in front of the Township Board to get your approval of the master plan.
Okay.
And obviously, happy to answer any questions.
I see Steve's hands up.
I have a question on the first one that you brought up there.
Which one?
The one that had 90-something, 94 dwellings
Oh, yeah.
in a 1-acre lot or something?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Can you go back?
Sure. Look at
Oh,
that.
there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, 94 dwellings per acre.
Yeah.
That seems like a lot. How much, I get it.
And plus, I want to point out, we're not recommending 94 dwelling units per acre
Right.
anyway. The point I'm trying to make in this image is we might very well encourage,
Dwellings or people?
well, know, we may very well get to a building type like this,
Okay.
where you have commercial on the ground floor with 7 apartments above it. 7
So-
apartments.
The one thing that's important to note on that
That's
building,
one dwelling,
No,
That's-
that's 7 dwellings.
that's actually 3 floors.
and that's a different way I'm looking at it, okay.
There are, yeah, there's 2 floors for the apartments, plus the retail space on the front has an apartment in the back.
So it's not
Here,
dwelling.
you can see it right there on the right-hand side, sort of an L-shaped
Yep.
building.
It's right behind Red Devil.
Yeah, so again, this particular example only occupies less than 1/10 of an acre. The whole site is only 3,237 square feet. But on that 3,000 plus square feet, you've got 7 dwelling units on that. So again, if you developed an entire acre
Yep.
at this, you would get up to the 94 dwelling. But we're not even recommending that.
Okay. Got it.
We're saying that this building type might have a place in the township, in the rural town center area.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No more questions? Okay,
That just means you did a good job.
I'll take that.
Okay.
I did have one question on the master plan. How much this is copied from the previous one, 2012?
How much of it is copied from that?
Yeah.
You know, copied, I don't know if copied is the right, we sort of built off it. So all the demographics and everything are new. The land use policies have not changed, you know, a whole lot. You know, the densities, obviously, as I mentioned, we debated at length with the planning, I shouldn't say debated, it was discussed at length with the planning commission. So some of those densities, but the overall concept of preserving a big chunk of the township and directing the growth into some more strategic areas, that's consistent with the 2012 plan.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't start with a whole new plan.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
a moving, yeah,
We-
a living
we're
document.
supposed to renew it every 5 years.
Yes.
All right, what's the board's pleasure?
I would move to approve Resolution 2024-18, the adoption of the Holly Township Master Plan.
I have a motion by Clerk Winchester. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Treasurer Ryan. Any further discussion? None appearing, I'll call for a roll call.
Ruth,
Yes.
Winchester,
Yes?
Ryan,
Yes.
Collis.
Yes, motion carries 4-0.
And we will give you a resolution to adopt to that effect. Unless you have.
We did it,
Oh,
yeah.
we did, oh.
Yeah. Alexis.
Okay?
Great.
Both for John and for John Ballin, I happen to think, well, I could have said it in my report, but I didn't. Just to give you a heads up, I got a phone call from Ed Lum at Shannon Fasteners up on Dixie Highway, letting me know that they are getting ready to build the other half of their distribution. And they wanted to give us a heads up, and he called me for a meeting to get the ball rolling on that. That was just another call this afternoon. So, some more coming.
Mhm. And, yeah, it's just gonna keep going.
Yeah. Well, that
Obviously,
distribution
they're
center
doing
that's
well.
on that property was designed to be, it has a wall down in the middle. It was designed to be doubled, but they're getting ready to move forward on that. And they were giving me a heads up and wanted to meet with you guys and Doug Smith, Knoxville and so forth. So just to put that in your hat going forward.
Fantastic.
All right? I appreciate it. So we can move on then to the zoning implementation proposal.
John again.
I'd be happy to present something if
Yes.
you'd like. So we put together a couple slides just to show that
That's this.
the
Yes.
zoning is the way, the most effective way for communities to implement your master plan. And we've been talking about updating the zoning ordinance for a number of reasons. We've done a lot of patchwork over the years to try to put fires out here and there, but now it's time to go back sure you guys are protected, make sure you're consistent with other state obligations, I hate to say it, and other things like that. And also to make sure it aligns with your land use policies and your master plan. And that's the biggest, I think the biggest objective here. So we've given you a proposal. And Karen and I talked a little bit about it on the phone, and I just want to clarify that the overall, doing the zoning ordinance is a $31,000 project with the statutorily required public hearing process as part of that. We did have some other options for you in terms of engaging the public if you're so inclined, and those are spelled out in there as well. Any one of those would be fine, or none of them. You don't have to do any of them. So those are your options for those additional public engagement.
We've done this and kicked this down the road as long as I've been here, and I've been here 25 years. So I really would like to ask the board if we can just go ahead and finally move forward and get everything up to date and where it should be.
Yeah.
And it's in the budget, it's time,
It's long overdue.
long overdue,
We've
yeah.
been batting around.
Yeah.
Well, we've run into the recession, then you turn around and run into the COVID,
Just
and everything kept hitting us, and we're trying to get these things to the forefront and get it moving.
Yes, yeah, I think it's really important. And it's a lot of work by the planning commission, and that's what they expect us to do as well,
Yeah.
is to move forward and implement what they've put in
Well,
place.
and we've got a good planning commission in
We
place
do.
right now.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Got a good
Yeah.
mix of people that are with some analytical and
yeah, they do a great job.
any questions from the board? Oh, yeah, Mr. McCanny's here this evening.
Mike?
Support.
Just to clarify, John, you said not to exceed 30,000, you said 31,
I thought
But that was-
in the proposal.
it's 30?
I think it says yeah, it's in the paragraph it says 30, and then in the table it says 31.
Oh, you're right, it does.
30 it is.
Okay.
Sold.
My only question was more for you is just, I noticed it's approval for the project, but then they also mentioned their new rates. Do we need to approve those separately? Does that need to be approved at all, or are the rates kind of a separate thing from the project?
The rates are, if it goes over and above, then those are the rates.
Got it, okay.
Okay. Board's pleasure.
I would move to approve the proposal for the zoning ordinance and zoning district amendments.
Motion by clerk, oh, I'm sorry, go
Not to
ahead.
exceed $30,000.
You took longer breath than normal. I thought you were
I
done.
did, because I wasn't
Okay.
sure that I was including it.
Motion by Clerk Winchester to approve the zoning ordinance district's amendment plan. I will support that. Is there any further discussion? None appearing. Roll call, please.
Winchester,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes?
Ruth,
Yes.
Hollis.
Yes, motion carries 4-0. John, thank you.
Thank
You gentlemen are free to go.
Yes.
You may want to sit and listen to the next thing that we've got going on.
We're just busy.
Well, we've got some things going on, and finally getting movement on some of them.
Yes, yeah.
You know, it seems like it takes forever for some of this stuff, because the process is so long, and it's nice that when it all comes in all at one time. It also means that when we get this close, we've spent the last couple of days, you and I, in meetings and on phones with attorneys, and it's
It's a lot.
a lot, but it's refreshing when we get here. So let's go down. The next item on the list is number 3. It's a real estate listing proposal for Holly Township. There are 2 parcels. We receive a list from the county of properties that are owned by the township, and they ask us to confirm that those are indeed properties that are owned by us. There are 2 properties we got back in tax, for back taxes. There are 2 small lots out in Great Lakes subdivision, the one you were talking about. I'm proposing that we put one of them up for sale today. Why not the other one? Well, the other one happens to be a small lot right next to a lot that's also a couple years behind in taxes. And it's on a corner. And if that one goes as well, then it would probably be more advantageous for somebody to be able to get them both as a package deal. So I'm gonna hold the one in reserve to see how that goes on the other. If those taxes get paid, then we'll bring that one forward. But if that one goes the way it appears to be going, then I think it's more advantageous that we sell those two at the same time. Then the other one is a property we've had listed before. It's the 49 acres over on Fish Lake Road. We have worked with Chuck Stoner, longtime resident in Holly Township, member of the Board of Review and the Land Division Committee on that property. We've talked about that. We had it listed one time before without too much success. I was a little disappointed in that last time we had it listing because a sign never appeared on the property. We were courted by one gentleman that wanted to tie up the property while he went out and found a developer, and the board wasn't too keen on that idea. So we held that back. We did have a meeting with the village and found out that that property has the possibility of sewers. It's right in next to the neighborhoods, and it's on the village border in the past. So we've got some tools going forward. I know, John, you and I talked about that property as well. In fact, I made a note, I like your agri-hood idea, perfect property for that. It's also a perfect property location-wise for some dwellings that would suit seniors that want smaller spaces or not have to take care of garden apartments. There's kind of some multiples that would go into that property. That's property that the township acquired a big portion of it through unpaid taxes. Then, a few years back, purchased a property that came for sale on Fish Lake that backed up to it, that gave us access from Fish Lake Road. Prior to that, the access was only next to Bars League, and it only had a 15-foot easement to get onto the property before. So the property that was purchased on Fish Lake gave us a larger access getting into the property, and it increased the acreage from, I think, 30, the purchase was 20 acres, so the other one must have been like 29, giving it a total, we combined them for 49. That happened since I've been here. So those are the two properties. Chuck Stoner's here tonight. Chuck, if you would come up. I would like for you to explain to this board, some real estate issues have changed based on some state law, and Chuck can talk about that.
The biggest thing that's happened, obviously there was a lawsuit that a lot of people knew about, where NAR was involved with a couple other entities in the real estate world, and it's created some new nuances with the way real estate is being done today. It started as of August 17th, where there's more disclosure and discussions for the buyers and sellers to have the ability to understand that they know they can negotiate not only commissions for the listing of the buyers, but also on the buyer's agent. So if someone's listing a property, they also have the ability to decide whether or not they're going to give commissions to the buyer's agents. The buyer's agents now have to make sure they communicate that with buyers that they may or may not offer. And if they don't, then that agreement has to be made with them. In the days past, it just traditionally was always done by the seller. So there's just more disclosure. It's kind of what we've always been doing, but it's in greater detail now. And so I put together a few things just for the council to look at, knowing that the decision not only is always what you're going to list it at, but also what you want to offer. Commission-wise, I expressed how I do business, what I charge, and it's the biggest thing to understand is it's a mutual agreement. We both agree to do business together. So if we can't come to an agreement, then we don't. Then they can choose someone else. But the ideology is always to help the community out in any way you can. And obviously, that's what I want to do. Help and serve in capacity quite a bit, so, I'm a big believer in that, third generation living here, and that's important for me. But when it comes back to the new rules and guidelines, the biggest thing is making sure there's full disclosure. And when it comes to making those decisions, it's really just making sure you understand you have the freedom to choose. And just as I have the freedom to choose to whether I want to list the properties or not, that's the same goes with you guys when it comes to commissions. So that was really the biggest thing that's different from today. So I worked up a few numbers based on conversations, but all of that, I want to make sure everybody knows that's on the council that's a discussion for you guys to make a decision on what you would like to offer for commissions, not only for myself, but for a buyer's agent that goes along. That's really all I've got.
All right, any questions? Chuck, thank you. Okay, so on these two listings, part of the conversation that we had, Karen was involved in that conversation, was, you know, you look at this, and if you go with the old 6% or 7% or 8% for commercial properties, and you talk about how they used to be, it was a split. 4% went to the lister, 4% went to the seller, or 3% depending on where you were. And in this one, if you give the lister 3%, as Chuck had said, there were a couple of deals that came down where they only wanted to give the seller 1%. Somebody wanted to give the seller 0%. The discussion we had is, how interested are people going to be that are out there seeing these properties for sale, working and bringing a buyer if there's no money there? And I understand that the state changed the law so that you have a right to negotiate that. I get that. But my only concern was going forward, if you're not willing to pay a commission to the seller, then who's going to help sell it outside of your lister, you know, on that thing? My biggest concern with the way we listed it the last time was the fact that there never even appeared to be a sign out on the property. It did hit some lists, but there were local agents around here that couldn't find it on a multi-list because apparently there are different lists that you put them on there. Chuck was one of those people that came proactively to us and said, this thing's not... Hey Josh, can you turn the car off? Wow. Sound has some plates. John, they started your Camaro. Sound like it was parked in the next room, right here. So, that's just my perk to put it in.
You can also have a sliding scale. Buyer, seller can get more based on the actual sell price. So much is negotiable.
Yeah. Were you able to hear that, Chuck?
I did not, I'm sorry.
That's right.
Come on up this way.
You can have a sliding scale.
That's Bob. That's Bob Alsop's hot rod. It's parked right there.
You can have a sliding scale, which would mean, in this case, the seller would get more when the buyer sold.
Not sure I follow.
You can have a sliding scale, so you get 1% if it's at selling price.
Well, for the buyer's agent.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you can offer, you can create terms however you want. And that's, to go back to what George just said, we're gonna see this play out. And I've got my first deal already that we'll see how it works out. But, what I know is in the past, anytime there's been a reduction in what you're offering, directly impacts the offer.
Right.
Because now the buyer has to make up that difference for their agent. And that's gonna hold true. And I had a gentleman that missed out on $8,000 on what he wanted because he was offering less than what was due. And therefore cost, at the end of the day, it all balanced out to where I told him it was gonna, but fair warning, and sure enough, we got to an $8,000 gap and we couldn't close it.
Somebody had.
So a decision had to be made, and he already knew that he took that risk. So, yes, you can do, you know, it's a full price offer, it's this. If it's above, you can even give incentive.
Sure.
You could even do a reduction if it's lower. And you could absolutely do something of that nature, absolutely.
Okay.
It's total freedom on that, however you want to structure. Yeah. And just, I guess I'll say this too, residential, in the, I guess, the typical past has been 6%, 6 to 7. Vacant land has typically been 8 to 10, and commercial is usually 8 to 10. Just so you know numbers in the industry, that's pretty normal, and then it's split up accordingly. In the old days, I would create an agreement with you, then I would decide what I wanted to give. Because the agreement was you're gonna pay me, then I'm gonna pay the other agent. So now, even though I may directly do that, you have control of that. That's one of the other big differences. I want to make sure that distinction is there.
While I have you up there, Chuck,
Yeah,
did you want to go ahead and explain the difference between these two listings? Because I know on the lot, which is a lesser price, you have just a flat rate.
oh, yes, anytime you get to a certain level, like the one parcel in Great Lakes is a very small parcel, the value of it is very low. So a lot of times I just start a flat fee. Because it just, you gotta charge something. If I did it on 3%, I'd end up spending more than that, just trying to get it sold. So, that's pretty typical of a smaller value property, whether it's land or whether it's a house. It's just an easier way to go because we have a certain cost factor that we're gonna have, otherwise it doesn't make sense for us. And so like on that one, I proposed like a $500 flat, just because it's worth somewhere between 3 and maybe 6,000-7,000. So
Oh, yeah, you did
there's not a lot of
200,
people here
yeah.
to start with,
Yeah.
but I don't want to gouge, but at the same time, I could easily spend more than that, just marketing and advertising. So overall, this is making a little bit of money.
Have you ever, I got one,
Yeah, but
nothing to do with this conversation, but have you ever heard of a real estate value worth 0?
no. And that's another conversation we have anytime you want.
You have one.
I used to be in the bracelet.
That's the Smith
We'll
case.
talk about
I used to be in the
that.
bracelet.
I knew right where it went with
Yeah, we
that.
still have sores over
I
there.
was saying, that taste is still in your mouth.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think they just reinforced it,
Yeah.
the taste. It's pretty bad.
Okay. And Chuck, the time frame on this listing is how long?
What's that? As far as
6 months?
the list,
Yeah,
I could do 6 months or a year.
okay.
I know where you live.
Okay, so what's the board's pleasure?
I would move to approve listing with Chuck Stoner for parcel 0133-300-031 and parcel 0124-355-023 as proposed.
Motion by Clerk Winchester to list both properties with Chuck Stoner as proposed.
That's for 1 year.
Oh, I forgot the term. So
Yeah, I was
one,
gonna say, if you wanted to
1
stick
year,
with that, I would do that, whether you want 6 or months.
6 months, I think. would be good.
6 months, because we can always extend
You can
it.
always extend it, absolutely.
Yeah, for 6 months.
Okay, is there support?
Support.
I think you beat trustee Ruth to that one.
That's
So we have a motion by Clerk Winchester to list both properties with Chuck Stoner for a period of 6 months, and as presented, with support by Treasurer Ryan. Any further discussion? I don't think I need a roll call, do I?
I would.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Ryan,
We're not
Yes.
spending money, we're hopefully making money.
Yeah, it's just a contract, so it
Yeah.
kind of,
Go ahead.
okay, Ryan,
Yes.
Ruth,
Yes.
Winchester,
yes.
Hollis.
Yes. Motion carries 4-0. Now, we'll move on to code enforcement. This next item I put on the agenda, I technically don't have to bring this to the board, but I wanted to because it changes the way Holly Township has looked at code enforcement for the past many, many years. When I came into office in 2016, we had maybe a half dozen cases that had been hanging around for umpteen years, and we had an occasional complaint here and there. Over the last 8 years, that has changed. We have roughly 2,200 homes in the township, the outer township particularly, because we don't do code enforcement for the village. And out of those, we have about 5 that I would call repeat offenders. And they've been bouncing around with this problem for 20 years. And then there's probably, you can bump that number up to a 10 if you go to the last 5 years. And these are people that would have blight, we'd get a complaint, and we've always been reactive. But they're folks that would have some blight, have an old car, then it's 2 old cars, then the neighbor would call and somebody would complain, and we'd have to go out. And for every one of those cases that we go out on, because the law requires us to do unilateral enforcement, if we hit a particular street or a neighborhood due to a complaint, while we'd go and deal with the complaint directly, we would then have to go through the neighborhood and pick up everything else that was there, which might cause 10 or 15 more letters to be sent out and action to be taken. Through that process, in order to get the complaint taken care of, we often end up having to go to court. We end up having to threaten court. We have to end up filing in court. And up to this date, the township has always absorbed those costs as part of doing business. Well, the costs have escalated over the last couple of years because attorney fees are more expensive, the filing fees have gone up, and as I sat there and looked at it, it's the same people over and over. You've got 2,200 and you've probably got 2,000 that don't have a problem living within the rules. But you've got this other 200, maybe 150 of those are just a blight, an old car, a tractor, a camper or something. But you've got this core of 15, maybe 20 that they wait till the date. We just had one happen. We had to take it to court. We put it in court. You can read some of these documents. They're available. I didn't want to read them out loud because there's actually some names mentioned in here. But it was a report I'd asked the code enforcement officer to put together for us. These names are actually people that we had to go to court and get a court date and get it. Well, the day before it would get cleaned up, or the weekend before. But we've been dealing with them, some of them 2 years old. We have a few cases out in the township. We've been fighting with these people for 2 years. Some of them, if you drive by them, I think you would be amazed at what you saw. One in particular is the one on Hauser. We've been going back and forth it's vacant property, trying to track the guy down because he's constantly on the move. We've had him in the office and he said, I'll get it done. And then we don't hear from him for 6 months again. And instead of getting it done, there's more stuff out there. And the people living next door to it, they're calling and complaining because there's tractors moving at 3 o'clock in the morning. They're pushing crap from one side to the other. We go to court, Lisa's got to do the document, we've got to file the stuff, we get this, then as board members, on the one case, we've given multiple 30-day, 90-day extensions. I can say this name because it's been in court. You know how much we've done on the Lou case. I mean, that case, albeit I truly believe it's predicated in mental health issues, which we can't get any help for. We've gone down that rabbit hole, and until the person's willing to go in and say, I need help, you can't do anything. Well, so what I'm bringing in front of you tonight is I want permission to change the way we handle code enforcement. I want to go from reactive to proactive, because I think if we start going out in the community and when we see the car, the pile of junk, whatever it is, and we start dealing with it that way, I think it saves us from going 2 years down the road when the one car or one pile of junk turns into 3 piles of junk and 4 cars. And at the same time, for what I would call the repeat offenders, the constant issues, I would also like to start charging for fees. The attorney can ask for fees when we're in court. They don't just give us a date that it's got to be cleaned up, but they award us fees. If they don't pay the fees, it goes on the tax bill. But, because we had one, we just got the court date, it just got cleaned up, and I'm not kidding you, the week later, it was like they had done some remodeling, this pile of junk was out there, the weeds had gone through, the one neighbor was upset trying to sell their home, and they said, can you get, it took us all this time, we got it cleaned up. It wasn't a week, and there was another. Well, the problem with that is, you already cured the court case. Now you gotta start all over. And we already spent the money. And I said, I think we're just at a time that the rest of the residents in this community, because we're growing, we're not that rural community with the house every quarter mile or anything. We've got more of this out there, and we're getting more complaints. And I think going forward, we need to do that. So what I'm asking the board is, and I'm doing this publicly because we'll probably follow this up with a press release and notice, so that people can understand, we're gonna start being proactive on this. We're gonna start moving forward. We're gonna start issuing tickets. I think since I've been here, we've issued 2. Interestingly enough, I know, Mr. Ruth, you'll be familiar with the one because it's close to where you live. We had been dealing with the problem with that resident for several years before I come into office. I met with the people that were having the problem with it. It was ridiculous what was going on. We finally dealt with that by issuing a $75 ticket with the threat of going to court. I went out on the property, met the gentleman with a file of papers and pictures. It stopped. He then called and said, it's all done. Can you take care of the ticket? And I said, yeah, bring a check for $75. I'll give it to the treasurer. He got PO'd up and he hung up. The next day, a white Cadillac pulled up in front of the office. A woman got out of the car, walked in, threw an envelope at Mark Freeman and walked out. I remember Mark sat there going,
What is this? Yeah.
well, my office at that time was right in with his. And I said to him, I said, open it up, I'll bet it's a check for $75. And it was. But it was, the problem went away. And I think if people start to realize we're serious and it's gonna cost them money,
They'll fix it.
my hope is that it'll curtail a lot of this.
I agree.
But it is a change for Holly Township. We're going from a reactive community to proactive. And we'll do it with a press release and we'll tell people, we're gonna change the way we do business here in Holly Township. The attorney said I didn't really have to come to the board, I could make that decision myself. But because it was such a change for our community, I thought the conversation should be had here. Then we can, instead of George being the bad guy, it can be,
The board.
the board has supported this and we move forward.
Did you say, what was going to go on the tax bill?
If it's not paid,
Yeah.
then it will go back to a tax bill.
So, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Oh, she loves collecting money.
We already have some of those, like when we have to mow someone's yard or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and even, we've even got a repeat offender with the yard, and we go through the whole damn motion,
Every time.
and they mow the grass, I think, 3 times a year, because by the time we go through the steps, they mow it 2 or 3 days ahead of time,
Yeah.
and then we have to start all over. And because we've been reactive, it's the neighbor that goes, here we go again, here we go, and this poor woman's been in her office year after year after year, trying to get this same problem resolved. I did have, I'll tell you one that we did, because I knew this was a tenant and it wasn't the property owner. And I don't think the tenant realized that if he didn't pay it, it would go on the taxes. But we issued a ticket.
Oh.
Well, the property owner came in, for those of you that may know Al Klaus. Al Klaus came in and he said, I want to thank you for sending that guy a letter. I've been bitching at him. He said, you gave him that ticket. He mowed that grass right now. and came to me and said, they gave me a ticket. He said, yep. So we know it works.
It works.
We've seen it in action, because we have issued a couple. That one that I was telling you about, where you're from, over your way, that gentleman called and accused me of abuse. And I said to him, no, because or that I was picking on him. Actually used those words. And I said, no, the law says that the first ticket's from $75 to $249. And I said, if I was picking on you, I'd made it for $249. I said, but I'll tell you what I'll do. If you want to push this thing, I can write you another ticket in 5 days. That one's for $250 to $499. That one I'll write for $499, so when we go in court, you can tell the judge I'm picking on you. And then I'll show him the pictures of your yard and what you're doing in regards to the neighbor's yard. And I said, if I'm wrong, you know, if I'm not, you can pay both tickets.
Yeah.
That's the one, that fixed that one, and we've never heard on that
Never had
one,
a problem again.
and that's been probably 6 years, 7 years. That was right when I first came in that we dealt with that one. So that's what I'm asking the board. The packet with the information was, or the information was in your packet along with the report that Amy put together. And for those that are interested, it is foilable, but I didn't want to go through the whole thing. So I'm just
Is you
here
just
to get
want
a-
a consensus, or?
I'm just here to get a
Yeah,
consensus.
I'm fine with that. Yeah,
Sure, I am too.
yeah.
So rather than put into the meeting, if I could get I'll make a motion to move forward on becoming proactive with our code enforcement. Because I don't want the minutes to show no action taken.
Oh, okay. I'll support.
So support by Cullis, second by Winchester. The motion is to move forward with the change in, from reactive to being proactive. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. That just shows as a township we're all on the same page. So, okay. The next one is the authorization for participation in the Michigan Cooperative Liquid Asset Security System. Proposed resolution 2024-19. Karen?
No, that's not me.
Oh, is that yours?
That's mine.
I'm sorry.
So this is my class. This is one of the, so there's a few different local government investment pools. I had meetings with each of them. Basically, what these investment pools do, I mean, we're already investing in things. Right now, we do most of our investing through multi-bank securities. And we'll buy, you know, CDs and treasury bonds and things like that. But this gives us the chance for really the economies of scale. We can only, I mean, when they sell those different things, they're at a minimum dollar, and we only have so much money that we can put in. But when we're pooling it with everybody else and all the other municipalities, and I mean, if you look at the list, like it's a lot. There's, you know, they have like 839 in this Michigan class, and you know, 33% of that is just townships. It's 16 out of the 21 Oakland County townships, including like Groveland and Rose and everybody. It's very safe. They're not only limited by our restrictions for what we can legally buy, but they also have schools in the pool, and they have even stricter restrictions. So it's very, you know, safe investments, and it gets us a chance to get that return. And another really big bonus is it's super liquid. Like, we can get the money out like, I think you have to same day ACH by 3 p.m. So like, we can get our money, there's no minimum balance, so if we just need to take it all, we can just take it all back out and just have the account there for in the future if we can have extra funds to put back in. So it just, I talked to lots of other treasurers at the different, you know, educational things, and I haven't heard any complaints, really. Everyone's like, oh yeah, I love my investment pool, and particularly Michigan class seemed to be a favorite. And like, the board of trustees are all treasurers at like municipalities that are in Michigan class themselves, and things like that. So it seems very safe, and we'll get a really good return. I mean, like, just what was the last date I pulled was August 18th, and it was 5.38%. So
And if you pull early, there's no penalty?
no,
Wow.
everything. I mean, it's fully liquid, and you get your interest each day.
Yep.
My only question is it FDIC insured?
No, it's not, and neither are any of the investments we have. The CDs, but not any of the treasuries that we have with the multi-bank securities. It's just investments, but they're all, you know, AAA rated, you know, high prime, whatever. They've never had any kind of losses.
Oh, Mark told us it was FDIC insured through multi-bank. I thought
It's
all of
just-
our investments were insured.
I don't think
That
you-
makes me very nervous.
Well, I mean, it's just as
You only have two
safe. It's
For
That-
each account, you'd have to have that many accounts for 250.
that's not usually how the investments work. So like
Okay.
that's just like in a bank. So that's if you have
That
money
was
in a
the
bank.
CD.
So
Right.
CDs, a CD would be in a
Okay.
bank.
That was a CD.
Or like just your regular checking account in a
Gotcha.
bank. But then everything else is.
And the CDs are the ones that were, I remember when I first came in, our CDs were earning 1.6%.
I know, it was terrible.
And if you moved them, the penalty was you just lost it all.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
Yeah, it
So
ends up washing.
We would
there's-
monitor, Mark would come and say, I've got one coming up, are you planning on spending money? He said, I'll hold it off rather than renew it. So,
Yeah, so I mean, it's about as safe as you can get for investments. It's the top of the top. Because I mean, we're limited in what we can buy as it
Right.
is. But mostly you get that economies of scale because everybody else's money is in there too.
Mhm.
And you can take yours whenever you need it.
so you need the board to give you permission
Right.
to.
Yep, and that was actually one of the reasons
Because
too
it's-
that I liked them versus the other options, is they actually required us to have a board resolution that said we wanted to be in the plan, whereas the other one, it was more just like a general contract kind of thing. This one specifically was like, no, we want the whole board on board.
And you're comfortable not having the attorney review the documents
Yeah,
themselves?
I mean, you can have them, if we want to say that we approve it contingent on the attorney reviewing it, that's fine. It's a pretty, I read through it, it seems pretty boilerplate.
Okay.
Pretty standard.
Yeah, it just seems pretty, yeah, involved to me.
Okay, what's the board's pleasure?
I move to approve Resolution 2024-19 for participation in the Michigan Class Investment Pool.
I support that.
Motion by Treasurer Ryan with support by Trustee Ruth. I have to be careful, I usually go TR for Treasurer Ryan, but Trustee Ruth's the same thing. Okay. Any further discussion? This being a resolution, roll call, please.
Ruth,
Yes.
Winchester,
No?
Ryan,
Yes.
Collis.
Yes. Motion carries 3-1. Okay, now we move on to public comment. Anybody in the audience for public comment? Ms. Kelly?
First of all, very informative today. I really learned an awful lot. I just wanted to kind of go back and address the proactive code
Excuse
enforcement.
me, could I get your name and address,
Oh,
please?
Sorry, Elizabeth Kelly, 5383 Grange Hall.
Thank you.
And which is a wonderful idea, because that's a way that a lot of municipalities are heading. However, it should be broader than just targeting single-family dwellings. So landlords, to make sure that they are maintaining their properties. It should include commercial, to make sure that those are up to date, and that should include regular inspections as part of that. That's typically the way the proactive code enforcement works, so that it's not just that, but maintaining all of the properties within the township and making sure that they're all up to date. and up to code.
And we do that if,
But this is on a schedule, where you're
Okay.
doing this on a regular basis.
I just, if I said something that made you think this was only single-family dwellings, I apologize. It's code enforcement across the board.
Okay.
Yep.
Because, but the idea is that, especially with rental units, because often.
Well, we actually have better luck with those. Because usually once you mention, because usually what happens is the problem is a tenant, and when you notify the landlord, it usually gets fixed. So, but this is gonna be across the board.
Right, because typically you respond to a tenant's complaint about the landlord not fixing the hot water or whatever. But the idea is to make sure that
Well,
these things are maintained. on a
The
regular
problem there is we don't have an ordinance that covers landlord fixing hot water.
We have that on our list of to-dos.
We've got some of those things on a list.
Right, I'm sure that there's, the more you unravel, the more things that you see that, we need as we grow. But I just wanted to mention that because it's a very broad concept, and to take a look at all aspects of code enforcement, and not to be reactive to when things are broken, but to be proactive so that you're making sure that everything in the township is up to date, and that there's visitation. Also, I don't know, if you're aware, but in Oakland County, at the Board of Commission level, they do have, especially for affordable housing units, they will work with the landlords. There is a housing trust fund, and so what they do is if someone has denigrated the unit, what they will do is they, up to a certain point, I think it may be $5,000, that they will work with them and give them some money to be able to do that, or to maintain some upgrades. So that may be another thing, that the idea is not to be working against the person, but to be working legally with the person. Thank you.
I have a question for you.
Oh, sure.
What do you do about cooling or heating and roofs, for example?
Well, the county has a program. I happen to sit on the board. I'm appointed by the Board of Commission to this board with their neighborhood and community division. And they actually have money through CDBG grants where they will, for people who meet income requirements, they will, these are for either single family or owner occupied dwellings. They will provide the funds that becomes a lien on the property, but there is no interest on it, and it's paid only when the property is sold. So
Oh,
for
we already
heating
do
and
that.
cooling, for
We already do that.
huh?
We already do that.
Right, but the
Yeah.
county does it too.
No.
Through
We're
the
in that
county.
program.
Through the county.
That's, when we get the CDBG funds and we give it to that, that's the
Right.
program we assign them to. We've had some residents utilize that money.
Yeah, it's a really wonderful program, and I think they're also looking to see what they might be able to do to enhance that, because on your heating and or your electric and gas bill, so consumers is both in this area. Consumers also has a similar program, and we actually pay that as part of an excise tax that's on the bill. And so we're working together to try to also put that in place. But they'll do that, they start out and they do an energy audit, but if the person meets a requirement, which is 200% of poverty, then what they're going to do is they will provide them with with somebody to come out and install a furnace, put a roof on, to help improve the property so that it's safe. And typically, the people are usually seniors or people, they even will work with manufactured homes, which I don't know if the county does that or not, but consumers will do that. So that's another avenue as well.
Did I hear you say they will work with people up to 200% of poverty?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mary Blanchard? I'm sorry, I wanted to finish my note. I'm not always good at multitasking.
Mary Blanchard, 3444 Old Creek Drive, Holland, Michigan.
Josh, is that working? I don't think it is. It was with Mrs. Kelly, but it just,
Maybe that'll be it.
I'm sorry.
no, I think the battery probably died.
Thanks. Mary Blanchard, 3444 Old Creek Drive, Holland, Michigan. And I just want to clarify, last month, I believe it was Anna Matson who had suggested that the Township Board could move to the new building and hold the monthly meetings, and I'm just wondering if there's a reason that we cannot do that.
John, what?
We'll be working on the building. That was the whole intent, is we're gonna be doing the remodeling, so we're not going back and forth.
We would also have to clean it.
Yeah.
We'd have to be keeping it clean for every meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But it does seem like now you're talking probably spring of 2025, is that correct?
Yep.
So is there a possibility we could use the building just for the monthly meetings?
Well, while maybe in the next 2 months it would be possible, once you get into construction, you wouldn't want to be there, and we don't want to be jumping, where's the meeting this month, back and forth. We'll stay here till we can go there, and then we're there.
Yep.
Okay.
Anyone else for public comment? Sherilyn?
I'm Sherilyn Everly from 314 Hadley Street, and just one little thing. George, you and I talked about this once before. The property that you're just talking about, that butts up to Bars Lake,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes all the way to Fish Lake Road?
Yep.
Trail. If we could get something from Fish Lake Road to Bars Lake, you're in the village.
Yeah.
If there's any way that that could be incorporated into whoever buys it, that they be, I mean, that's master plan, right? But if that could be incorporated into that strip, man, that would be a nice piece to have.
Chuck, are you
That's all
here?
I got.
You're in this, all right.
It's a nice piece of property.
Anyone else for public comment? So I wish I had done this earlier, and I didn't realize Mr. McCanny was going to leave early, but I wanted to congratulate those that made it through the primary election. Sherilyn, it will be on the November ballot, and Mr. McCanny, along with Mr. Mattson and Mr. Kinnaman, both of those I know are on vacation this week, so they're not in town. And Derek Burton, and I don't know what happened to Derek, I didn't hear from him, which is unusual. I checked my text and there wasn't anything there. So I hope everything's okay with him. But those four didn't make it. Did make it. Martin Andreski did not, but I appreciate his willingness to participate and offering to serve. So congratulations to you. And
I'm not sure of that answer. We were just talking about that. I don't know.
I didn't think it was a question.
Yeah.
well, there was nothing we could do on the primary, but I don't know why we wouldn't be able to take that off going forward. You'll have to check on that.
Yeah,
Because I know when he passed, the ballots had already been put out.
yeah.
And, I think it's a credit to him. He got quite a few votes, and as did you. So I will say this. I thought the turnouts county-wide were disappointing. Holly was third from the bottom with 17.2, but the best communities, which were Huntington Woods and New Lothrop down in that area, were only at, the top one was only at 40%. And when you think of, and you hear this in our daily lives, when you hear people complain about government and what's going on, and then nobody votes? I mean, we literally had 17% of the voting people in this community make those decisions, which really surprised me because we had so much traffic.
I know, it's crazy.
But how many absentees were not returned?
Oh, like, what, 800, wasn't there?
Over 800 absentees weren't.
They just saw the races and decided that.
We
it
did
didn't matter.
we did get what, 2 that came too late? I think we got
really
2.
didn't-
There were definitely some in the office the next day.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah,
they, like,
there were
just-
okay.
2. I didn't know
Yeah,
if
just
any more
normal.
coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, but still, it just,
Because they even,
Just
the post
disappointing.
office will bring them to me before they leave.
and
at like
now,
7 at
especially
night. Yeah.
now, when there's so many different ways to vote. You had 9 days you could vote.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember how many numbers we produced there? It was ridiculously low.
Oh, that was, no, I think there was, I don't have the numbers,
It
but
was,
I think there
at
was
one
more
point, I know
like,
it was up to 28, so I know it
I
was,
think there was like around 50 some.
yeah, but even so, that's
It's,
over 9 days, that's like 5 a day. And we had to have that facility opened all that time? Yeah, I know Laura Moreau lost her seat as supervisor in Springfield by 80 votes. And she said they had over 700 absentees that didn't come in, and she did well in the absentees. So, yeah,
It's hard.
the landscape is gonna be different as we go into the next year. We have new supervisors in Rose Township, Springfield, Independence, And Groveland is because Bob DePalma retired, but nonetheless, it puts new supervisors in all of those areas. So it is going to be a different landscape going forward. That being said, is there anybody else that had any comments before we leave? I want to thank everybody for the participation. This was a pretty educational night to be here. We had a lot of things that all hit at the same time. I'll call the meeting at 8:06.